What is contrast therapy and cold exposure, and how can we incorporate it into our spas? That's our webinar focus for today. I've got the fantastic Maria, my friend from TechnoAlpin Indoors here. Thank you for joining me, Maria.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Oh, you're super welcome. So I just want to give a bit of background. So the background to our webinar today is I came on your experience, to your showroom, and you gave a great presentation all about contrast therapy. And I think we're seeing a lot of spas looking to incorporate it into their offering, but really not necessarily sure about the science and data behind it. And I think when we're introducing things, we want to have that knowledge. So I've got a few questions because we do talk about heat and wellness, but cold is often misunderstood. So from a scientific perspective, what role does cold exposure play in contrast therapy? And why is it not an optional add-on after heat?
Yeah, so cold exposure now it is a huge trend, as we all know, in the wellness industry, in the spa industry. But really, cold therapy has been around since forever. It was found already in the Romans. They did the Tempidarium and the Caldarium. It is deeply rooted in the Alpine traditions, in the Dutch-speaking area, but also in the Nordic region, where they use the sauna and then they walk out into the snow and they cool down with the fresh and cold air. But really, cold nowadays it is sometimes forgotten. The cold is sometimes forgotten and it's almost seen as an add-on or something additional, but really the cold is not the opposite of heat. We shouldn't see it as the opposite of heat. It really completes the cycle. Without the cold, you only get half of the physiological benefits. So in order to briefly explain you that, when we get into the heat exposure, into the sauna, we have this vasodilation, which means our blood vessels expand and there is an increased heart rate. There's this thermal stress that appears. And then afterwards with the cold, it is called the vasoconstriction. The blood cells turn to their original size again, and there is a blood redistribution to the vital organs again, and it activates the nervous system, and it's anti-inflammatory signaling into the brain. So really, this alternating process from hot to cold can also almost be seen as a vascular workout for blood vessels, and this improves circulation, helps with the lymphatic flow and recovery. So really, it is not, we cannot see it as an optional add-on, because without the cold, the blood remains in the periphery and there's no circulatory reset and there's no real adaptation as well. So with the cold, you can create this stress recovery loop, and the body becomes way more resilient. And this is really what we've tried to, this natural habitat of the cold afterwards. As spoken before about the Nordic traditions, where they walk out in the minus 10 degrees Celsius in the snow, wrap themselves in the snow, and then potentially even jump into the ice cold lake. This is really what we tried to do with the snow room, but have it indoors. So yeah, the snow room has minus 10 degrees Celsius, which is a natural cold. It is a dry cold. There is the inside of a snow room is almost designed as a natural landscape where the snow sticks on the walls as well. So the end customer can really walk in, take the snow, put it on their body, and it is a very accessible cold for everyone. Everyone can really use it, younger people, older people, and it is a controlled stress. And it is repeatable, and a moderate cold and the breathable cold, instead of an extreme shock to give to the body, which enables really consistent use. So the end customer uses it multiple times, which is the real key benefit of the
I'm
cold.
just going to touch on something you said there about walking in. One of the things that amazed me walking in was that the snow crunched. Like
Yeah.
when we came in to the snow room, you walk in and you actually get that crunch as you go in. It's not it is that alpine feeling, isn't it? It's quite incredible.
Yeah, it snows during the night, so really in the morning, during the day, you walk in and you feel like you're in the middle of Norway, with a fresh, no snowy landscape. Also, we have a scent system in there with essential oils, so really it's a multisensorial experience as well. So it's a complete, yeah, a complete experience. Yeah.
And so what actually happens in the body during the cold exposure? You talked a bit about the vascular side of it, but neurologically and hormonally, and how does that differ from like the stress response that people often assume it creates?
Yeah. So the cold exposure, it is a stress to the body, but it is a controlled, intelligent stress. It's not a harmful stress. So if we're speaking neurologically, first, the initial is the activation of the sympathetic nervous system, and the cold shock response is when you start breathing faster and your heart rate goes up. But this is quickly followed by a regulation through breath. So with breathing, is quickly regulated, and we shift towards the parasympathetic balance. So really, the cold trains the body to move from the stress to calm in real time. And with this, for the circulatory, this is incredible because, as spoken before, this vascular workout almost brings the blood to flow, and this really leads to improved circulation, reduced inflammation, much faster recovery, and it builds resilience in the body as well. And yeah, it's not draining stress, it's really training the stress in the body.
Oh, I love that. It's not draining, it's training. I
Yeah.
really think that. That's a good way of putting it. That's and how I mean, I'm going off a bit from the questions that we have here, but how often can someone do this? Is it something they should look to be doing daily, weekly? No.
As often as possible. I'm so whenever you do a sauna, you should also do the cold afterwards, as well. So you can do the snow room. It's a natural cold, so really everyone can do it, and you can do it as often as you want. They New studies suggest to do the sauna 4 times a week. So 4 times a week, you should also do the cold. This is obviously not sustainable for everyone,
Yes.
but as often as possible. I would say if you have the possibility to do it 3 times a week, then 3 times a week also the snow room. It would be definitely the best. And yeah, and because it is this combination of the dry and wet cold, and it avoids this full shock, full body shock, and it allows this controlled exposure into the cold, and it makes the body really focus on the regulation instead of the survival.
Mm.
It's not a survival mechanism. So people also, they don't do it once and never do it again. They should really do it as often as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think there is that bit of that mentality, isn't there? Sometimes
yeah.
with the plunging into the water, people go, I'm just going to do it once and then don't do it again because of the anxiety build up into getting in the water. Whereas this is much more accessible because, as you say, you can finish the sauna, walk in. It's not I've got to psych myself up and
Exactly. And
yeah.
put the body into fight and flight mode. Because cold doesn't have to be extreme to be effective. It is still as effective. And yeah, the more repeated, the better it is. Because doing something once, doing the snow room once, or doing a cold plunge or a cryotherapy once will not change your life. But doing it repeatedly, this is what will actually have the benefit.
It's really interesting when you were saying about the snow. I just remembered my boyfriend when we were in Sweden was telling me when he lived there about how they would sauna and then jump out and roll in the snow.
Exactly.
He's like that was the best sauna experience. Just he said you just be in there and you just go, okay, 1, 2, 3, open the door and just go into the snow.
Go out, breathe the fresh air, really cool the body down, and then jump in the snow. It's incredible. I used to live in Finland as well, to a bit see the sauna culture more in depth, and this is what they do every single day. For us here, it's not all in the UK, in the Caribbean, it's not always sustainable to have a sauna. In Finland, everyone has a sauna at home. I wish I had a sauna in London, but
Wow. Well, but there's so many memberships and clubs popping up. The
yeah,
trend
yeah,
is here to stay. That's the
yeah,
thing, isn't it? It's not, I think it's sometimes in everything you see a trend and it comes and goes. But like you
yeah,
say, can't have a sauna in an apartment in London. So
yeah.
people are buying sauna memberships, and
Memberships,
spas
yeah,
are almost needs to maybe even consider a sauna contrast bathing only membership for people
yeah.
who just want to come and do that.
I
Um,
agree.
one of the other things that we often hear about with the contrast is that, and this is something that we constantly talk about in the industry, is that a lot of the reporting and data to date has been around men. So women often, when it comes to the contrast bathing side, report very different experiences with cold compared to men. What is science now telling us about the way women respond to cold exposure, particularly around hormones, the nervous system, temperature regulation?
Yeah, as I already said, most studies have been done on men, especially in the cold therapy, contrast therapy. A lot of it has been studied on men. Hopefully, we have soon a lot of studies on women as well, because it's so important, and because the women, they just respond differently. They don't respond worse to cold, but they do, their body responds differently. Their body is completely built differently. We have a much faster perception of cold, to our temperature regulation difference. Our body regulates different than a man's body, and we have hormonal influences. We have estrogen and we have progesterone. So our body does work differently on different times of the month. And our nervous system is often much more sensitive than a man's nervous system. So really what we can say is cold exposure is not one size fits it all, not even for women, but really for women, it really depends on their time of the month. It really depends on different factors, how they're feeling, but also how they have slept, how they have recovered, if they've done a workout before. So that really depends from every single time they do it. And that's where we really need the women to be more focused on how they feel and to take it a little bit differently than men take it. For example, extreme cold can feel too aggressive, especially wet cold, because wet cold is perceived by the body 25% times colder than dry cold, for example. Yeah. So, and controlled environments are sometimes more sustainable for women. So I work with a lot of women together, in the wellness industry, and one of the first things that I always hear is, I don't like cold. And that mainly comes from women. No, a lot of the women, they don't like the cold, which is normal because, yeah, our body is built differently and we don't love cold. So really with the snow room, we're trying to bring this natural cold in there, the dry cold and the combined with the wet cold, that it is a controlled environment, which is much more sustainable for women. But it also allows the body to self-regulate, to have this gradual exposure to cold, to go in the cold and slowly cool down from starting from the airways. The airways are sometimes forgotten to cool down, to have this nervous system friendly adaptation. So we did work with a doctor, Dr. Christian Tuil, in Italy, where we have a guideline on how to use the snow room, for example. For women, it could be 4 to 6 minutes. For men, it's a little bit longer, between 5 to 7 minutes. But
Oh, okay.
really, yeah, but really, we don't, on purpose, we get this question a lot. If we don't put a timer, like in the sauna, that we put a timer in the snow room. But this is a choice that we can put it in, but it is a choice to not put it in because we want the end customer really to listen to their body and feel when they have had enough, and not this time, because for women, yes, mentioned before, in some periods it's more aggressive, they like it more aggressive, and some less. So this is really depending on the body. So cold exposure doesn't need to be avoided, but it should definitely be adapted for the female body.
Are there times, in the women's cycle or life stages, such as perimenopause or menopause, where cold exposure needs to be adapted more or approached differently or even avoided?
Yeah, absolutely. For example, the women goes through different phases. We go through the follicular phase where we're more resilient and we're more, this is more optional for a cold exposure, and we're way more resilient to cold exposure. And then during the luteal phase, for example, the women are much more sensitive, and that's when we really should start reducing the intensity. And during the menstrual, it's completely optional because that should be very comfort based, comfort focused, and sometimes, but the same goes with our workouts, with our sauna behavior. We should adapt the sauna, but also the cold, depending on our phases. And the same goes with premenopause and menopause. The nervous system is much more increased in its sensitivity. So we're also fluctuating temperature regulations more. And so that's really, is still beneficial, but it should be kept shorter, more moderate, and focus more on the calming effect of it. Really, cold exposure should follow the body and we should not fight it. That I think is very important. We should not fight with it. We should not have to do something, but it should really follow the body. And when it feels good, we should do it more, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's really good. You're right. If it feels good, do more. That's just
Yeah.
that just there's we talk about like our women's instincts, just because we're talking about the women here, you do know when you're through your cycles and things like this, and actually focusing and stopping, and obviously we want more scientific data, but actually at the moment while we're waiting for that scientific data, just to be able to follow what feels good for you. It's super important. I like that as a
It is very important and not to push it. We're not built the same as men, and we should know that, and that's how we should adjust to it as well. So I think that is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true, so true. I
Yeah.
mean, we've covered a few of them, and we've talked about the very many forms of like cold exposure now, cold plunges, ice baths, snow room, cryo. From a physiological standpoint, what are the key differences, and where does snow-based cold fit in that spectrum?
Um, Snow rooms, or the snow rooms in its natural habitat, is it has been around since a long time, as we mentioned before, in Finland, in the Dolomites, in the Alpine region, and it was always this social wellness ritual. It is not something extreme, but something people return to and keep doing the whole time. So the difference to the snow room is it is a gentle, gradual cold. So it is the cold therapy that cools the complete body down from really head to toe. It cools, including the airways. It cools the airways down as well. And that is always forgotten. I was just in the Dolomites in a spa hotel, and there obviously we have the snow room in its natural habitat. You go into the sauna, the Aufguss, and you walk outside, and it is minus 10 degrees, and there is fresh snow. Yeah, and the Aufgussmeister, the first thing that he was saying was like, pull your airways down at first, breathe, do a lot of deep breaths, and then try to cool the rest of the body down. If you want, put some snow on your body. You can even have a cold shower afterwards. This depends on how the person is feeling. But the most important thing after hot sauna is to cool the airways down. So yeah, that really makes the snow room unique to, let's say, compared to other cold therapies. And then on obviously it is very multisensory. It's an experience. You have snow, you have light, you have the scent system in there, which is essential oils that open up the airways, and it really completes this complete wellness moment. And it is very inclusive and accessible for everyone. So we have it is accessible for disabled people. It is accessible for elderly people, younger people. it is even accessible for pregnant women because it is a natural cold. It is very natural to the body. We also have, for example, one snow room here in London where it's in a multiple residential building. And every time I go there, this guy is 94 years old and he always does the snow room. So it is very beautiful to see that it really includes everyone, not just the 30-year-old athlete, but elderly people, women, male. Yeah, that's very interesting to see. And also for people who might not tolerate the extreme cold, who don't like the cold, it is a great way of cooling down. Because it's very gentle and it's not forced. It's not this forced cold. And then we have the emotional element as well. The snow room really brings something back into the wellness that's a lot of the times forgotten. And that's the joy, the playfulness, and the social connection of people doing it together, enjoying the experience, having an experience. And it awakens always the inner child in people, which is very beautiful to see. And it brings this, yeah, happiness hormone, the dopamine back. So that's very, and this matters scientifically because the cold therapy works best when it is repeated regularly and integrated into the routine. Best, obviously, if it's integrated into the daily routine or at least once a week or once a month. And that the routine only happens when something feels good. It feels safe for the body and it's something that people actually want to return to. So not something that they have to push through or, yeah. So really,
Up, when you want to psych yourself up to do it, it's not necessarily something you'll do consistently, is it? Because you'll go, oh, I'm just not feeling it today, and you'll miss your cold exposure if you aren't feeling it. Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, so when cold becomes enjoyable and social, the social aspect I find very important, it really becomes sustainable and that's where the real benefit starts and begins.
There's a lot at the moment about social wellness, isn't there? That is a huge topic at quite a few of the larger conferences I've been to, is people talking around what is social wellness, because we all do want to be more social in it. And you're right, feels more social, and the joy. I love the idea, the playfulness, the joy behind it. And you're a 94-year-old man in London. I'm sure he throws the occasional snowball at himself.
Definitely does. He really enjoys it, and it's beautiful to see. It's very beautiful to see, and that brings this back to wellness. What sometimes it's also forgotten. It's not all lab. It's not a lab. We're not going into a lab. We're going into a wellness center. We're not going into the doctor. It should be something joyful and interesting and nature. Like it brings the nature inside as well. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you so much for your time. I was so impressed when we came to your headquarters and it tried the snow room. It was incredible. And as I said originally, it was my first Aufgaus experience too, and now I'm hooked on that. So it was a bit of a game changer for me, I won't lie. So I so grateful for inviting me to join that experience, but also to taking the time to go in more depth into, I'd never even considered the breath until you just said it then, the cooling of your breath. That's a huge takeaway for me when it's considering the difference between the types of cold exposure is that breath. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of our biggest organs, our lungs. So it is so important to cool that down. And sometimes you just in wellness facilities, especially in the cities, they're underground, they're 25 degrees, so you don't get the chance to cool down your breath. So it was, yeah, me going back to the Dolomites a few months ago, I was, yes, this is why we do what we do, and it's so important, and it feels good.
It feels good.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave on that. It feels good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. It
Thank
feels
you, Sarah. Thank you. Bye.